Welcome to HCAM series, all about getting to know the fascinating people who have dedicated themselves to make Hopkinton the place that it is today. We'll learn about their jobs and projects they are working on, but more importantly, we'll learn about who they are, their hobbies and interests, and why they do what they do. I'm Silly Donda, and this is Out on the Town. Today we are here with Eric Carty, Hopkinton's Water Sewer Manager. Thank you so much for taking the time to come onto the segment.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You have been the water sewer manager in Hopkinton for over 30 years. How'd you end up here?
I actually grew up here. I'm starting on year 39. I started part-time in the summers and then gradually ended up staying here and working my way up through to where I am right now.
How did you decide DPW, water sewer management?
When I first started, my neighbor was actually the clerk here for over 30 years. So when I graduated high school and was getting ready to go to college, I was commuting, so I was looking for a part-time job, and she was able to get me a part-time job here. So I started working in the summers, helping out, and then when I was going to school, I was reading the meters, so I'd go around. Back then, we used to have to walk to every household in town and write down the numbers, so that was my first job.
What's your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part is the men and women that work here. We've got a great bunch of people that work here, and it makes it fun and coming in every day. Everyone always helps everybody else out.
I've noticed that there's been a lot of construction and population change, and that's only been in the 3 years that I've been here. I'm sure you've seen a lot of population growth in construction. How has that affected what you do? Has it changed your job a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very limited supply of water. We have gravel pack wells that are in the ground, and we share water with the town of Ashland through a wastewater plant, but it's a limited supply. So as the population has increased, and it's been rather rapidly here in town, it's put a strain on our system. That coupled with some of the issues that we have with the water with contaminants in it, it's been a real challenge for us. Through the past few years also, the rules and regulations have become much more stringent with the DEP. So we're looking to the future, and our current plan is to connect to the MWRA, which will give us a lot more supply, be able to sustain the growth of the town, maybe add. Only 70% of the town is actually on town water right now. There's other areas of town that have wells, and those can often go dry during the drought years, so it'll give us the ability to maybe tie some of those areas in.
You mentioned connecting to, I think you called it...
The MWRA.
How does that work? What's the future for the water department?
So that is the Quabbin Reservoir, which is out in the middle of the state, is owned by the state, and that's what supplies all of Boston, and there's several other communities along the way that provide water through there. So that's a much better water supply that we currently have. Because our wells are older, the more that we draw out of them, it draws in basically minerals, iron and manganese, which are very prevalent in New England. They're in the ground, and they can cause staining and other issues. They're not really health-related issues.
What did young Eric Carty think he'd be doing for a job now?
I'm a big hockey player, so my goal was always to be a professional hockey player. I grew up when Bobby Orr was famous for the Boston Bruins. I grew up on Lake Maspinock, so I learned to skate at a very young age. So I think I even have it in my yearbook.
What was your family like growing up? Did you have any siblings?
I do. I do have a sister. She's been in Florida for quite a while. She's 10 years older than me. My neighborhood is a very tight-knit family neighborhood. In fact, my neighbor, Jean Scalata, who got me this job, her father actually bought the land where we live now on Lake Maspinock. He bought the whole side on Oakhurst Road that I live on, and he developed that. So I grew up with Jean's kids and her brother's kids. The Deneen family was the family that originally established the road, and Jean was a Deneen. So I had 3 extended families, and we spent all our time between either being in the water or we have over 100 acres of woods up behind us. So
now, you mentioned earlier that you actually are living on the same spot, that you were born in the same house for 57 years?
That's correct. Yeah, my home was an original camp that people would come out. It was actually called the Boulders because it was built. The camp was built on top of a giant rock that was over there. So people would come out from the city and they'd rent the camp for the summer to go out and use the lake resources. So my parents bought that in the 50s.
Now, I know you often come on HCAM to talk about the weather trends in Hopkinton. Where did that interest come from? My
family friend we played hockey together. We were best friends growing up. His father was actually taught weather in a Natick high school. And he would always follow all the weather forecasts. And one day he was watching one of the channels and he saw that they were in Boston. It was either raining or snowing, I forget which, and so he called up and said, "Oh, we got bright sunshine out here. We don't have that." And it was actually Bruce Swigler was the weather forecast, and he said, "Well, you know what? Would you mind doing me a favor? Could you would you mind calling on a regular basis and letting us know what's happening out in Hopkinton, because it could be different from what's here. So he was like the original weather spotter for anybody of doing the weather here in Boston. And so he kind of got me interested in it. For my job, I have to track water levels and track snow levels because it's important for recharging our wells and aquifers. And so he said, "Oh, why don't you start calling?" And I kind of like, I'm too busy to do that. But the more I thought about it, I'm already doing it. There's not much more other than sending it in. And now it's so easy because it's all computerized. There's apps and everything. So you merely just punch in the numbers and you can send that information off. And it's, it's very helpful to the weather services, and that gives us an idea of what's going on around us. So it's been fun for me to do that. I also WBZ weather watcher as well. So I report the readings in the morning, noon, and evening shows so that they have an idea of what's going on out here in the suburbs.
You were explaining to me earlier that Hopkinton's weather is like a little unique. I think you were saying because of the river, it splits. Do you want to explain that a little more?
Yeah. It's two unique things for us. One is the elevation. We have quite an elevation change, and my friend that got me into the weather here, Dick Whalen, actually said his father told about the Sudbury River. We can have storms, and it was very prevalent last year when we had a drought. We were kind of praying for the rainstorms that hit us last year, and you could watch them on the radar, and as they approach our town, there would be a full line of rain all the way down the state, and as it approached us, you could actually see it split and break up and go around us. I kind of friendly referred to it as the Hopkinton split, but it seemed to happen frequently. Every time you looked at the radar, you could see it, and they said it had something to do with the storms kind of following the Sudbury River, and the effects that our hills have an effect on those storms that they break them up. So it's kind of a unique phenomenon. And the other thing with our elevation is we can have storms in the winter that on the west side of town, which is a little higher, we can have, say, 5 inches of snow, and down in the eastern part of town near the Ashland line, because it's a lot lower elevation, it could only be 2 inches of snow.
I know when we were talking earlier, we were talking about beekeeping. How did that interest start?
So I was following the issue online with the bee populations have been decimated over the past few years for several reasons. Some of it from pesticides, other from other insects that invade them. But probably the biggest one is just the urban sprawl, as we call it. Is there's so many new houses are being built. A lot of them have very large lawns, and those large lawns are taking away the bees' native species that used to grow there. All the wildflowers that we look at, basically we'll call weeds, the important flowers that the bees need in order to make nectar and help pollinate all of the flowers. So I wanted to get into the beekeeping in order to help promote water conservation, and the fact that we wanted to start having people maybe look at making smaller lawns, having more of these wildflower areas stay prevalent, so then they don't need as much water to water the lawn. It actually helps out the bees.
What's something most local residents wouldn't know about you?
I'm related to a few famous people. Marilyn Monroe I'm related to. My sister is big into DNA ancestry. So she actually went back and did some research and found that we are related to Mary Chilton, who was the first woman to step off the Mayflower when the Pilgrims came over. She supposedly stepped right onto Plymouth Rock. So she was the first female to step off the boat, so we're related to her.
Marilyn Monroe and the first woman to step off of the
Mayflower. Yeah, kind of an interesting combination there, to say the least. And John Alden, he was one of the famous Pilgrims who, I think he became the first lieutenant governor or one of the governors of Massachusetts when it started. So,
what are you most grateful for in your life right now?
I've got a great family. I've got two kids that have grown up, been super kids. I've got a wonderful wife. And again, those families and friends that I've had forever, the Deneen Scholars and a lot more. Just a really good support group, and it's been a great town to grow up in.
Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, and thank you for everything you do in Hopkinton.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.